Hello, welcome to the second week of Critical Hits Month of Horror. I'm David.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Matthew.
And this week we're going to be looking at John Carpenter's The Thing. The story of what happens when a very unique dog happens to stumble upon to a scientist base in Antarctica, and things happen.
You make it sound like a Disney movie.
It's when one wacky dog
It's a retelling
meets up with
of
one
Lassie.
drunken Kurt Russell. Hijinks ensue.
In The Thing.
But
Spooky.
Contrary to how we've introduced this, this is a pretty terrifying movie.
Actually, I think it's pretty well done. This is my first time seeing it. Matthew,
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Matthew, same time. Dave is a veteran.
Yeah, I loved it ever since I saw it, a good 6 or 7 years ago.
Holds up then?
Oh, it holds up. Oh, of course, yeah. They actually did sort of a prequel of it that came out, and you don't see it. It's
That's right. Yeah, I heard it was awful.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is that the effects are CGI, and they discernibly look worse.
Wow.
Actually, the 2011 movie holds up worse than the 1982 one.
Well, we can jump into first impressions, or we can just talk about how awesome those effects were.
I just want to straight up say, as someone who's watched a lot of old school movies and more recent movies, CGI's got nothing compared to just hands-on special effects.
Yeah.
Every time it looks so much better.
No, I don't know. Sometimes when I go back and I watch those things, they've really, really dated themselves.
This is not one of those.
In this case, this is not one of those.
Well,
First off, because the quality was so good.
Yeah.
Second off, because how they were using it was remarkable. It just looked fantastic.
Well, I think part of it was because a big part of the horror is just the disjointed nature of what you're seeing.
I think we should probably explain the monster a little bit here.
Yeah.
So
How do you
basically,
explain the monster.
that's part of it, is that it's so ambiguous, it's fantastic. In this case, the Thing is an alien that has come from outer space, and it at the beginning of the movie, it has already taken out another one of the science camps, and has...
Those poor Norwegians.
And so it manages to make its way over to the camp in the form of a dog. This creature can basically adapt into different shapes based on what it touches, what it can infect, what it can take over.
And
the creature itself...
It creates basically a perfect copy, too. You can't tell on any kind of surface level that it's different.
It's not like a Frankenstein monster where it's sewn the skin back up and it looks just creepy. It's actually the person
and
or
it's
the
not
creature.
just like it crawls inside them and hides. That takes on different shapes, and it's very inconsistent in how it looks, which is, I think, part of the fantastic way in which we can't just nail down what it looks like and thereby understand it, and in doing so lose that sense of terror and confusion and dealing with it.
Each time it appears, it's just this kind of this mangled, horrid combination of tentacles,
massive
and mouths,
tendrils and tendons
eyes and stuff like that,
and meat.
It's this wonderful kind of design where, because you never know exactly what it's going to look like, you can't ever quite get used to it.
It's wonderfully grotesque is what it is.
Exactly,
this is very much a horror of the grotesque variety.
Well, one thing that makes me love this movie so much is there's really, broadly speaking, there's two big elements to horror. There's the more suspense, psychological aspect, and there's the more visual, just gross out factor.
Yeah. Now we already covered a suspense, psychological piece when we looked at The Shining. That's very much the case.
Yeah, but what this movie does so well is it marries the two so efficiently, because even though there's great moments with the special effects that still hold up remarkably well and hold up because of the way the Thing is designed, but there's also in between those big moments, there's there's a point at the movie where the tension, it rises and it just never falls.
It does not stop. And after everyone is in on the fact that this monster is real, and there's a tension both between dealing with the monster itself and then dealing with the other people and who can you trust.
And exactly, because the real source of the tension is that they're wondering, well, okay, have some of these other people, are they infected too?
And there's no way to know. There's no way to tell. Every single person at some point is alone or is near the creature.
Yeah.
So it's just people never find out until it's too late.
Yeah, and at that point, the whole thing, pops open and it the person just deforms into, any number of really, really grotesquely creative forms.
Yeah, well, that's the thing I was going to say is it's certainly disgusting, but also incredibly creative. The entire thing is so well thought of and so well crafted. It's not just a cabin in the woods, watch out, axe murderer kind of horror where we're alone. There's no way to get help. They cut the power lines. This movie actually has a really good setting for that kind, that environment of we're isolated because it sets itself up as people who are used to being isolated
in the Antarctic.
Yeah, in the Antarctic. Like it didn't have to go out of its way to be like, look, they're trapped. There's no way they can escape. Like it set itself up to be like, these guys are used to being trapped in a sense. It made it more interesting when it amplified it because these characters. Oh gosh, I love the character.
They're already isolated.
And they're already isolated, and so when this horrible thing comes, some of them can't handle it well, but a lot of them just take to it, and a lot of them become hunters. They don't take this staying down. They all get and do something, whether it's break down the glass and grab a shotgun, or if it's like, okay, we're going to do blood tests now to find out which one of us is taken by the thing.
Well, and I think that there's a huge point to that. Okay, now I'm going to backtrack just a little bit here. We look at the horror genre, and there's oftentimes the fear of the other is one of the biggest things that gets played up. You think about old school sci-fi, you think of, what's the one, The Day the Earth Stood Still, and we can't trust this thing because it's different from us.
Yeah.
And and part of that's come from, World War II just ended, Cold War starting situation, and that follows us from 1950s, 1980s sort of thing in our horror.
Well, in fact, this isn't a completely original film. It was based on an original 1938 short story. So that was written, near the beginning of World War II. The next adaptation was in the 1950s, when a lot of the hostilities were growing, and this was in the 1980s, where even John Carpenter has said
that's pre-perestroika kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. It acts as like a sort of a Cold War metaphor because you're in this environment where you feel like you just can't trust anyone else.
That fear of the other has been played upon in a lot of horror movies, and in this one, there's the similarities between the protagonist or whoever's going on and the other. And in this case, like you were pointing out, they all jump on board to stay alive, to fight this thing. And that's what this creature does. This creature is constantly trying to survive, to keep on living.
But what's the really interesting point is that the way that they figure out in order to determine whether one of them is this thing is that they realize that each of individual part of it will fight for its own survival.
Yeah.
So what they do is they take blood samples and then harm the blood, because if it's the thing, then the blood itself will move and try to defend itself. And so really the way that they're able to defeat it is by taking advantage of its own lack of altruism. The fact that every part of it just wants to keep itself alive.
And it's when they don't do that, when they act like the creature and they think about the individual pieces trying to live. It's the creature mirrors them as a team, as a group. When an individual of that group is thinking only about themselves and their own survival, it puts everyone else at risk there, and they become adversaries. They perceive them as the other, as as the thing that needs to be killed. And at that point, they're just trying to survive. And so this thing is constantly mirroring what's going on.
But at the same time, it's also, I guess you could argue that it's multiple things because each basically cell can reproduce. It's still in a way on its own. It doesn't team up with other monsters at any time in this movie. Whereas the characters, even though they're incredibly hostile to each other at times, they all kind of settle down and say, okay, the only way we're getting through this is together. And at the end of the movie, it's even the point of, we can't beat this thing unless we take ourselves out. But that'll save the world. It's still a team game.
At the end, they're just trying to blow up the base so that they can kill the thing and it won't get out to the world. And they know they're going to die. I mean, they're in the middle of winter, or at the beginning of winter in the Antarctic, and they're blowing up their one heat source. They're acting with just complete self-sacrifice just to protect the rest of the world.
At that point they are.
And that's what the thing itself never does.
It can't sacrifice.
On an evolutionary level, it's a perfect creature. It's designed to continue and thrive and live no matter what. One cell kind of a thing endures, it can live.
Right.
And yet it's fascinating that something opposing that evolutionary drive to live and survive is what can defeat it.
And at the same time, the movie doesn't present this as like a noble thing. Like the music doesn't start playing like heavenly, and the character walks forward and sacrifices himself.
Not at all.
It's practical. He's just like, okay, at this point, we have to destroy the entire base to stop this thing. Humans can understand that as much as their lives matter, their lives aren't the end of humanity. Whereas this thing is it. Right, this thing goes. It's not coming back. If it's burnt to a crisp, it's done.
There's a generalization that there's two types of horror movies. There's it's the other, or there's the shadowy darkness inside kind of horror story. In this sense, this movie does both of that, both of those things, and it does them very well. At a time when it could easily have been, this is 1980s. This is like slasher films kind of reigned king.
Yeah.
So
well, even John Carpenter himself, he'd already gotten a name for himself for making Halloween.
Okay, yeah, so exactly. Yeah. This one bothers to go beyond just the simple, it's coming to get you, and manages to show sort of the problems that these individuals have, to the point where you have a character like Kurt Russell's, what is his name? My gosh.
That's McCready.
McCready, yeah. At the beginning there. And he is, you first see him, he's isolated. He's playing chess, virtual chess, when he has a room full of guys there, and he's drinking all alone. And then by the end of the movie, when there's one person left, and he can't actually tell if his friend is still his friend, or if it's one of the, or if it's the
as the movie ends, the base has been blown up, and only he remains, and one other of the crew members remains, who has been actually isolated for a while, so he could very easily be the thing, and
neither one of them knows. But at that moment, he takes a drink of this bottle of Jim Beam he's been carrying around the entire time. And then he passes it to the other guy.
Yeah, because
and it's in that moment.
What else are you going to do?
What else can you do? And it's almost in this shared struggle, whether it's the thing or whether it's his friend. There's this, I don't know if I should say beautiful, but wonderful nihilistic tone to it. Mm-hmm. That it's like, well, it doesn't matter. Which then takes this from being merely the slasher, gory, grotesque movie, and it moves even beyond the psychological one, where this is what's going on inside of me, or this is how humans are as well.
Or which one's human.
To the point where it becomes a perfect epistemological horror, where there's no real meaning at the end of all of this.
Yeah.
At that point, it's just wonderfully bleak and wonderfully dark. And I know that there was originally a backup one where he does a blood test and knows he's still human, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they even originally, I'm not sure if it was, it was scripted. I'm not sure if it was filmed. They were going to have a scene with the both of them being rescued, and then one of them turned out to be the thing. They didn't. Whether they filmed it or not, they didn't use it. Which I think for good reason. That's just,
well, the ending is
perfect. It's a perfect ending.
It's still going at full speed. With that steady thumping, and these two guys are basically like settling down to die.
Yeah.
But also kind of have each other in like this death glare. Like they're gonna stare down at each other as they die to make sure if you move, I'll take you out. If I can.
Two men, fire, snow, and a bottle of whiskey. It's a bottle of bourbon. It's a really good ending.
Yeah. Can I just say that, like, outside of everything we've been talking about so far, this movie is also just really fun. Like, it's a really good ride. Not in the sense of fun, like, this was fun, but like, oh man, that was crazy, or that was disturbing, or oh, I feel sick. But like, it was a good thrill.
I feel sick thing.
Yes.
Yeah, this was a room of 4 grown men watching this thing, and stomachs were churning.
Well, I shouldn't have eaten dinner.
You probably shouldn't have eaten dinner.
That was the number one mistake, especially with that stomach scene.
No, this is decidedly not a movie for everybody. And,
no, but it's a really good movie for what it is. If you want like a monster movie where like it's every man for himself in a way, it does a really good job. Like we've been like looking at like some of the under the surface level stuff, but I also want to say there's nothing wrong with the surface level of this movie.
No, the special effects held up. The monster was terrifying.
Oh yeah,
the characters were interesting, and they responded in a way that's different from a lot of horror movies where it's like what do we do, or we never share information with each other. This actually they operated as a unit.
For the most part, they behave pretty intelligently.
Yeah,
they were genre savvy. Frankly,
there were mistakes that were made, but they actually did a good job. And it wasn't genre savvy in a way like they've seen a movie before. It's just this is a group of guys trying to survive, and this is what you would actually do: is you would share that information because that means living 1 minute longer.
Yeah,
this is a weird one of those cult ones that just kind of has endured. I mean, it has comics. It got that remake that people that fans hate.
Yeah,
and it's just fascinating because originally this movie did terribly.
Yeah, it did pretty badly both critically and commercially actually, and I think part of the reason was honestly came out like a month after E.T.
Oh gosh,
it's kind
a
of
little awkward.
Our hopeful, loving alien who's going to just be our friend.
It just wasn't really capturing the mood that the audiences were in at that time. But I think honestly, for 1982, it's just so damn gross, and I think it made people even overlook the quality.
It's disgusting.
And what's interesting though, it opened up at the same time as Blade Runner, the exact same day as Blade Runner, which again, there's the "Am I that thing?" kind of moment there. It's with the replicants. It's the same sort of they look like us, but it's not us kind of fear there.
1982 was like the best year ever for sci-fi. If you don't know that, like this is the year we got this, the Thing, we got E.T., we got Star Trek 2, we got Tron, we got Blade Runner. Well, there's 1982 was an amazing movie for sci-fi. But the thing is, even in that year, the Thing was still able to stand out. And that's pretty notable. I think it's held it very well. I think if you get the chance, you should definitely watch it. Be prepared for quite an experience, though.
And I think it's gonna keep like holding up. It's the staple. I think a lot of horror movies of that genre, of especially the unknown other, should look to, because it does a really good job of demonstrating that. It does a really good job of isolation versus teamwork. I love the thrill of it all. Yeah.
It's a fantastic balance, and people should really go ahead and check it out and just be a part of that cult fandom.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's it from us. So we'll see you next week.
All right, catch you later.
See ya.